Okay, let's try and get this spreadsheet set up properly now. So we've got the headings from last time, and what I've done is I've coloured in sort of 10 cells here where the user is going to select the stock code. So I've just coloured those in grey, and as you'll notice, the other things I've coloured in grey is the address. So wherever the user is going to type something in, I've coloured those things in grey. So you can choose whatever colour you want to, totally up to you, but it's just about helping the end user of the spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this spreadsheet so that these codes automatically appear in a list for the user. Now, the only way we can really do that is by using data validation, and what we want is any of our this collection sheet where I've listed all of the items and their current prices. We used this sheet to do our filtering with. So I'm going to highlight just the stock codes, not the word stock code, but just from AF all the way down to WSE2, right? Those are my stock codes. So Control C to copy them, go back to my invoice sheet. Oh, did I say I set up a new invoice sheet? I should have done. I probably did. Okay, so, and then go anywhere away from your main spreadsheet. So the invoice is going to finish around column F. So I'm going to just go into column J, click in column J, and Control V or right click to paste those items. Okay, so I've just copied and pasted the codes, and so here what I need to do is I click on it, and I need to find where data validation is, maybe under, who knows what it's under, maybe it's under insert, probably not, developer, nope, data. So it is under data validation because I've made my ribbon smaller, it's made it really tiddly. So there's data validation, but you should just see it as a normal thing showing up. So I click on data validation, we get a pop-up value, and we don't want to allow any value, we want to allow only values from a list. So I've chosen list, and then it gives me this source option, so I click in source, and then I click on this button to go and select the column which I have already put the items in. So there's my AF1, I think that's where it starts. Let me just make sure. Yes, that's where it starts. So I highlight all the way from there down to the last code and press enter. I come back to this data validation box and say OK. Alright, now what that does, if I scroll back to my spreadsheet over here, what that does is it puts in now for me a little drop down box, so I just have to select the codes, and if I try and click in there and type something else in, it comes up with an error message, which is great. Okay, so now we've done that, guess what, we have to go, firstly we have to do that for all the cells, but that's dead straightforward because we can now highlight those all in one go, and I think I can just go back up to here, data validation, and not any value but from a list, and then choose the source. So scroll along to the column, highlight the items which you've copied and pasted, enter, and then say OK. And now for the 10 maximum items that we can have on our spreadsheet, we should have all of these where we can drop down a list, right, which is great. And last thing we have to do is we don't want anybody seeing this or messing with this, so highlight it and then hide this column so nobody even knows that that's where you're getting your data from. Okay, so that's great, and obviously having done that, we now need to say stock code here. So I've highlighted it, I've said validation, choose from list, format it to grey because of user input. Okay, so that's what you need to do. Okay, and I'm going to then just show you the validation formula because that's dead easy to do. So let's so don't worry about what I've written down there, you can write that in a minute. Okay, now the range, what we want to happen is when we've selected something from this list, then we know, because we've already set it up, we know that we have got, I think I called it collection, we have got all of the information next to the code, obviously here, including the price. So that's what we want to come up when that happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm in my collection sheet, or the sheet with just the current year's prices without VAT, and I'm just going to highlight the whole of the table. You don't have to do this, but it makes putting the formula in a lot easier. Highlight the data in the table, so none of the headings, and then instead of where it says A4, this is the name box, I'm going to give this table a name, because then I'm going to use it in my formula. So the name I'm going to give it is, I'm going to call this stock list. Okay, so that's what I've called it. So no spaces, no weird characters, just stock list. You can just call it stock, because in fact, let me see whether I can just call it stock. I can't just call it stock because I have got another range called stock. But so I'm going to call mine stock list. You call your stock, but whatever you call it, just remember what you've called it. Okay, so there's my stock list. Let's go back to my invoice sheet now, wherever that is. There's my invoice sheet, and let's put a formula in. So this is what the formula is and why we called that table stock list. We're going to say equals vlookup, which says I want you to go away and look up a value for me, and then we have to put a bracket in, and then it says, well, what do you want to look up? Well, I want it to take this value, put a comma in. Now I type in the name of my table. So I called it stock list. So it came up in the list, as you can see. So the minute I typed in stock, I could see the name of stock list there, and then comma, and the range is given in the second column. Okay, so I'm going to put the number 2 next to it, and then the last thing I want to do is put another comma in, and just it comes up with true false. So I can type in the word false myself, or I can double click on false. And what that means is it's got to find an exact match for this code. It's no good finding an approximate, and then I press enter. And that's just fantastic, because now I can choose any of these items and the range changes. Okay, now let's go and get the description. So the description, I think, is in column 3. So again, it's very straightforward. It's a VLOOKUP formula. So whenever things come up, I make use of them. So we want to look up our stock code, obviously, because that's what we've typed in. Comma. I want to go to the stock list table. So I start typing in stock list. There's my stock list table, so I don't make any spelling mistakes. This time I want the value returned in column 3. And again, I only want exact matches, so I'm going to type in false here, or you double click on false and press enter. That's fantastic now, because all we have to do is choose that, and all of these things change, and we do the same for price. So I'm going to stop this video here because this has gone on for far too long.